Nice.
Hey everyone, I'm Suzy, and I'm the former Community Engagement Manager at Microsoft Community. And I recently had the opportunity to move in within Microsoft in another community role, which is exciting. And it's in the privacy and regulations area. So it's super exciting. And it puts me in a unique place to be able to moderate my friends and former colleagues as we go behind the scenes of Microsoft's support community. And what we're going to cover is who we are, what we do, and what we've learned. So I'm thrilled to introduce Doug Kendall, who is the new engagement manager for Microsoft Community, brand new. So we're putting him on the spot. He's in charge of super user programs and moderation. And then we have Doug. Doug,
we look alike.
You do look alike. Dennis.
He's older. Yeah. So.
Dennis Pollett, who's our analytics manager, and he looks after BI and metrics. And then we have Rebecca Houghton, who is our platform planner, and she looks after platform strategy. We have two more people on our team who weren't able to attend today. David Creech, who goes by Creech. He takes care of support delivery, and he works with our gig and agent partners. And Olga Gaina, who is our operations manager, and she looks after quality programs and site administration. So this is how our core team is structured. In addition to this, we have 11 great partners around the world who are our community engagement team and our operations team. So Microsoft Support Community, what is it? Has anyone here, either in the room or online, any of you ever had a problem with your Microsoft product? I'm guessing not, but not you guys. So if you do, you can come to Microsoft Support Community. It's the official forum for technical support for Microsoft. The community is quite mature. It's been around for 13 years. And the size is extra large. We get 1 billion page views a year. The questions that come in from customers are, for the most part, answered by either gig freelancers, volunteers, or paid support agents. And we think that's a model that's pretty unique, so we'll touch on that a couple more times as we go on. So in addition to that, customer success is at an all-time high in the community. And Dennis, can you tell us a little bit about how we measure customer success and how we've gotten to this place?
Sure. And just one clarification about what we talked about earlier. So we're the official support forum for Microsoft for consumer and IW, so all things Office, Windows, Outlook, everything. There are other forums for engagement and advocacy. There's forums for commercial support and Azure and things like that. But all the consumer stuff is pretty much on Microsoft Answers or Microsoft Support Community. Quality, yeah. So this slide has a couple things on it, some good news and some bad news. And it's really to kind of whet the appetite for some of the things we've learned, but this is more about why it should even matter at all, I guess. The first story is we didn't do much for these top two or three OKRs for the first 5 or 6 years. Pretty flat. So customer success was not increasing. And we'll talk a little bit more about why and why that happened. But our key OKRs for the last 4 or 5 years have been around customer success, which has two flavors. One, we call OP success, or original poster, the person who creates the question on the community and asks their question. So we measure that success. And then we also measure success of browsers, or people, we call them browsers, but it's people who come to the site, have a problem, looking for a thread that describes their issue and trying to self-help themselves. So it's really about self-help. They typically don't post. They just come on, find an answer, hopefully, and then they're gone. So those are our two success measures we care a lot about. We also care about cost. In a support world, that's always a primary metric. So what's been interesting in the last 4 or 5 years is just the change in those metrics, where we did a couple things in which we'll talk about, some of which were great, some of which were not. But the increase we've seen in both levels of success for the OPs and the self-help has been pretty profound. And so it's bought us a lot of credibility and leeway in the last, we don't necessarily have a ROI story that's complete, but this helps grease those skids. And then what's also fascinating is we've had that increase in success, but at the same time, the costs have dropped like 300%, so 3 times. And it's, it's a big, like Suzy said, it's a big community, a lot of volume, but we've figured out ways to make the experience better and at the same time reduce the cost. So it's been kind of one of those serendipitous moments for us.
So that's where you're at today. And I'll probably say we a lot because I care a lot about even though I've moved to another team, I care a lot about the work and our customers and our volunteers and these people. So that's where we are today. So how do we get here? Dennis, can you expand on cost savings and other business values for the community?
Yeah, we kind of had these foundational issues, and one of them we labeled existential issues, so it's kind of a heavyweight term, but you have to think about the things in the community that keep you relevant and keep you tied to the business and keep you around. And so for us, it's a relatively simpler story than it is for a lot of other communities. And when we talk about communities here, we're talking about forums. We're closely partnered with the support organization. And so in the support organization, they care a lot about costs, number of cases worked, case deflection, and customer success. It's typical support-oriented metrics. And so when we think about how we measure community, we measure a lot of different things, but we're very careful and consistent about measuring those things because that's what the business needs out of us. And I think all of us as community owners need to align to what our business needs out of us. And to define that's really important, and it's not always super easy. So it took us a little while to really get to that because we wanted to be a lot of things. And I think the second piece we learned was it's really important not only to align yourself to those business needs, but to use that same vocabulary and terminology and same measures. An example of this, so in the Microsoft community, when we measure OP success, on those threads, we ask the question and have the same scale as customers do when they go through phone or email or chat. And so when we talk about what our success rate is for people who are asking a question, it's apples to apples with the rest of that support business so they can kind of compare and contrast. If you don't do that, it leaves you out of the conversation far too many times. So that's one of the things I think is really important. And then I think it's also important to, especially in the early stages of your community, is to figure out what your evolutionary path needs to be. Because if you don't know that, you're at risk of becoming extinct in some cases. So for us, again, it wasn't easy, and we made some mistakes along this path. But one of the things that was really clear to us, and partly why we didn't move the success dial in that first chart we saw, the other half of it was we didn't know how. But for us, it was really important in a Microsoft culture where it's a huge company, and we started out as a single forum in a single language for Windows. That's how Answers or Microsoft Community started out. And it was very small. And so at Microsoft, in order to survive, it was really important to create a consumer community that covered all the products. So as a customer, especially a consumer customer, an information worker, I had one place to go. So, onboarding Office was a big one. So Office and Windows, and then Outlook and Skype and Surface and Xbox and, you name it. So that really took a lot of our energy and focus for the first several years, but it actually was a critical piece because if we didn't do that, we may not have made it. So we thought some important things to talk about.
Absolutely. And then once you decide that your path is going to be a support community, Rebecca, how do you design for that?
Sure. So that's a great question. Hopefully you can all hear me do that. I think it's really important when you're thinking about how to design for a community, and you're going to hear a lot from me from the platform side because that's my role with the Microsoft support community today, is to really think about the platform that you need to be versus the platform that you want to be. So Dennis already mentioned that we partner really closely with the customer support organization. We're actually based in the customer success organization. So we have a pretty clear remit to empower customers to be successful. That's what we're here for. We want to solve their problems. We want to empower them to use our products. And yet, when we first created the community 10, 12 years ago, we did lose sight of that a little bit. We thought, well, we're creating a community. We must have reactions and emojis and social media sharing, and had to learn the hard way that for a support community, that wasn't really what our customers were interested in. And that doesn't mean that for engagement communities or fan communities that those things aren't, the right thing to do. But for our community, they weren't. And I'll give you an example. So you're trying to watch a movie and your internet router breaks, you're super frustrated, you might end up landing on the community page for your router company. At that point in time, you're not going to want to go around putting hearts on things or telling your friends what you found. Like, you want to get your problem solved and you want to get back to watching your movie on Netflix. So that's what we discovered our customers wanted. They didn't want to hang out or spend time in our community. They want to come in, get what they needed, and leave. So when you think about how you design for that, I mentioned customer success. For us, it's super, super important for us to be able to measure that success. So if you go and look at our site, it's answers.microsoft.com, you will see when customers ask a question, if there is a reply from another customer or a Microsoft support advocate, that they can, advocate is our name for agent, so Microsoft support agent, advocate, you might hear us use those interchangeably. We like to have a lot of names for everything at Microsoft, and acronyms too. So yeah, there's a really clear way for customers to say, yes, this answered my question. They can literally mark a reply as the answer. And then another thing that we did recently that was a feature that was really entirely on the back end and something that if you went to the site, you probably wouldn't even notice it was there, especially if you're an English speaker, is translation. And before I go into that, I just want to sidebar really quickly and say that we're on a first-party platform, so it's Microsoft-owned, Microsoft Code, Microsoft Tech, and we're fortunate to have a really awesome engineering team that we partner with. And that means that we have the flexibility to maybe implement more features than some other communities might. And there's pros and cons to that, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later. But anyway, so we implemented this translation service. We have 24 languages. Our biggest market is English. And the majority of our super users and, of course, our sort of fans and our freelancers, and I'll talk more about freelancers later, are based out of English, in the English locale. So we realized that we weren't being really inclusive and as helpful to those other 23 non-English languages. And we wanted to take the power of the content and the expertise that we had in English-speaking locales and give that to our non-English speaking customers. So the translation service, super simple, back-end tool. A customer in a non-English language can type in their question, gets translated to English, shows up in the queue of our super users, English-speaking super users or freelancers or Microsoft support agents. They type their response in English, goes back to the customer. So really seamless process. And I think just an example of the kind of feature that's not a lot of bells and whistles on the site. It's not like not super glittery, like you would never even see it, but something that's really, really focused on customer success. So we really had to hone in on that. The last point I want to touch on here is around reciprocity. So it's really important when you're designing a community, like whatever your community is for, whether it's support or a fan or engagement community, to make sure what you're designing is going to meet the needs of all the different stakeholders in your community. So if we take that translation model as an example, it met the business need to support and empower more customers. Our customers want to be empowered and supported, so it met their need. But for our super users and our freelancers and our support agents, it gave them the opportunity to help more customers outside of at least if they're English speaking, help more customers outside of their native language. So it really met everybody's needs. So if you keep that in mind and you're always sort of designing around something that's going to give something back to every stakeholder in your community, then that's going to help set you up for success in the long term.
Thanks, Rebecca. Another cultural foundation or community foundation that is really important is the culture of the team who builds that community. And we honestly have a really good culture. And so, Dennis, you have the most seniority on the team. And,
yes.
and Dennis actually served as the team manager for a while. So Dennis, can you tell us how to build a culture of a team that's going to run the community and how they are invested in the success of the community and the success of each other?
Yeah, when we did our dry run, Suzy said, oh yeah, Dennis, you're the former manager, and then they all looked at each other and bust out laughing. So it's clearly not built on respect for authority. But yeah, no, it's actually a great team. And so some of the things I think we learned from a team perspective, one was clear ownership of roles. So we actually organize ourselves functionally. And so Suzy and now Doug owns the volunteer program, soup to nuts. And so they're responsible for if it works great or if it doesn't work great, it's their area. Rebecca owns the relationship and the platform roadmap and with the engineering team. I work with the BI teams at Microsoft and am responsible for metrics. Creech on our team handles all the paid answers. So he looks after both gig and then Microsoft agents who are from outsourced providers. And then Olga manages all of our site operations and quality programs. And so each kind of has its own distinct area that we own. And I think that helps in a lot of ways. But what's kind of antithetical to that then is we're all dependent on each other to some level for success of the bigger picture. And so, when we think about what our key goals were for browser success and OP success and cost savings, none of us alone can do that. And so we over-indexed on communication and collaboration. And so, I think about like the meetings we have, and it feels a little bit overkill, but we meet for like an hour and a half every week. And
we really like each other.
Yeah, we actually do. And so we fill that time up, and it's good. And we keep abreast of what's happening in all the other spaces that might influence us. And so it's really good. So I think the final thing as a manager then I think is to hire for that. SME knowledge is important. We all love to get people who are great at community and understand community inside and out. But man, in some ways I would almost take a shot at somebody who's a little green in that area. But if they have this collaboration bent and they want to work that way, and then if they're creative, because in order to move the dial in community, it's hard. We all know that. So it takes creative solutions. And so that's what I like to hire for as a manager. But I'm not the manager anymore. So.
Voluntarily, by choice.
Yes.
Yeah, he was not moved out. So once you have the foundation of your community, then you're ready to start cultivating. And obviously, we have a great relationship on the team that helps build the community. And so the next step is to build those relationships with customers. But in a support community, Rebecca, are customers really looking for relationships?
No, I kind of touched on that already, actually. Our customers, as I said, don't want to hang out. They don't really want to hang out in our community.
They don't want to hang out with us?
They don't want to hang out with us. No, they just want to come in and they want to get their answer and they want to leave and they want to get back on with their day, which I completely understand. But that doesn't mean that and again, it doesn't mean that there aren't communities where you want people to hang out. It's just in support communities, we have learned that that's not something that customers really want to do. But it also doesn't mean that we don't care about their relationship with Microsoft. Like, we absolutely care about that. So when they come to our community, customers come, they are frustrated. We want them to leave just a little bit happier, hopefully a lot happier, but just a little bit happier than when they came. And so we really want to optimize around making the experience in our community as good as it can be, so we can really build on that relationship with Microsoft and repair it if we need to repair it.
That's one of the things that Rich talked about, in Rich Millington from Favor B, who's actually here. Thank you, Rich. When he talked about his ROI model, and not the ROI model, but the community-driven impact, it was moving up that chain a little bit, and that measurement's important.
Yeah, absolutely. So sort of keeping them sort of satisfaction with Microsoft overall good, even if they're not super satisfied with us in that moment. So we have learned that the things that are really important to customers when they come to our community is things like response times, like fast response times, good quality answers. And so that's like the actual information, but then also like a good customer service experience. And Dennis will talk a little bit about that later as well. And so I'm going to give you another example, because again, I'm the platform person. So my examples are going to be all feature related of a feature we implemented that really helped to optimize those things that we saw were really important for our customers globally. And that is a gig supplier model. So when I say gig supplier, think about it like Lyft or Uber for support. We basically work with gig suppliers. And so Microsoft fans and people with Microsoft expertise worldwide can sign up with those suppliers and then come into our community and answer questions, and they get monetized for doing that. They get paid for doing that. And for us as a business, it's super scalable. Think about, we have a new product launch. We're able to kind of do our own version of surge pricing and get more and more people into the community to help customers at a much quicker speed than, like during the pandemic, actually, it really helped us to flex and bring more people into the community to help support with all of that Teams usage that we were having. So so yeah, something that's been really impactful for us, and we reduced their response time. What was it, Dennis? From like 14 hours down to like
10 minutes.
10 minutes. So huge impact for our customers. Like from 14 hours waiting for a response to 10 minutes getting a response from one of our freelancers. And so yeah, when you hear us use freelancers, that's what we're talking about, the gig supplier. And then if I go back to that reciprocity model again, everybody's getting something out of it. Our customers are getting something out of it. The business is getting something out of it. Scalable, cost-effective. And then our super users now, who are volunteers, and our fans have the option to go and work in the community as well. They get to choose how they want to show up. So it's been something that's been really, really impactful for us, and I think still pretty new in the community space. The other thing I'm going to touch on really quickly is search engine optimization. You can have the best content in the world. It's not going to matter if nobody can find your community. And you can put the link to your community on your landing page. You can do cross promotions. But people really need to be able to find your community in its own right. And that goes for whether it's a support community or an engagement community. And, you can pay for, search engine advertising, sponsored advertising, sure. But think about building trust with your community, and how often have you searched in a browser, and the top result that's shown up has not been what you really wanted. So I think sort of paying for advertising is going to get you clicks, but it's not necessarily going to build you trust. So it's really, really important to focus on that organic search engine optimization. We actually did some work on archiving some of our older content. Like I said, we've been around for like 12 years. So you can imagine the volume of content that we had. And we hadn't deleted any of it. So we realized that we kind of had to go back and start taking out some of that older content so that we were really bubbling up that good content in our search engine results. So yeah, keep that in mind too. Your community has to be discoverable to be successful.
Absolutely. In contrast, though, when we're talking about relationships, the volunteer program, what we call our super user program, that program is very much built on creating relationships. And we have many volunteers who've been with us a very long time. Doug, what motivates the volunteers to stick with us?
Yeah, so as a bit of background, the volunteers are a sub-community of technical experts that are also experts on our platform. We have about 200 people that are part of this community. On average, they work about 1,500 hours per week collectively, and they answer thousands of end-user questions for our community. So these folks have really, truly deep insight into the community and the user experiences. And unlike the end user, this group of super users' primary motivation for participating in the community is around helping other people. So we try to do everything we can to help them achieve their goals as efficiently and as effectively as possible. The other primary reason for them to contribute on the platform is because they want to build relationships within the super user community, as well as with the community team and product group representatives. So my team does this through a variety of different communication vehicles. For example, my team interacts with the super user community daily through Skype chat. They have their own personal forums where they're able to interact with each other, as well as with the community team and with Microsoft product group representatives. We also have monthly virtual meetings where all of our super users are invited, and we host a variety of different events, everything from social activities to product group presentations. So it's really around these activities that we try and create these deep relationships. And as much as we want to grow this community, we do that actually very carefully, and we're particular about the people that we bring in for two primary reasons. We want to make sure that, first off, our team is able to scale to meet the needs of the super users so that we continue with these deep relationships that we have with each one of this really important group of people. And then over the years, the super user communities developed their own culture. It's a culture around giving back and helping other people. So we want to make sure that we bring in people to meet the needs of that culture.
Love the volunteers. They're the best.
They are the best.
They are the best. I'm super biased, but it's a fact that our volunteer program, the volunteers in that program have the highest customer success rates and the highest answer quality of anyone in the community. Dennis, can you tell us a little bit about how we measure answer quality?
Yeah, and I could spend just a half hour on this topic, but we have one more slide, so I'll hit this one really quick. You know, at the simplest level, it's did the people get customers get their answers, and so the success measure plays a piece in it. But if you think back to that chart again, for the first 5-6 years, it was flat for both self-help and help me, and so it was a sore point for us. We finally stopped. We onboarded everybody. We had this single place, and it's like, what's the thing we're embarrassed about the most? And it's like, well, quality isn't where it should be, and so we really buckled down and said, okay, how do we fix this? And so part of the problem was defining what quality meant and caring about it enough to do something. And then another piece we had to do was figure out how to measure it. And so we implemented this program we called ACES, and Creech and Olga, who aren't here today, they run that between the two of them, and they do a fantastic job.
And ACES stands for?
Aggregate Community Engagement Score.
And ACES means?
It's awesome. So you have to have an acronym. But it was a way for us to audit threads. We had, it's criteria and we would manually go through and audit these threads. But for us, one of the downside of being, in a big corporation and having a volume is we get 50 to 75,000 new questions every single month, and we can't read those, for quality perspective. But the theory was, if we do it based on answerer, that scales, because we only have 600 to 700, only 600 to 700 answers out there active, and if we can audit a statistically significant number of threads for each person, we'll know how they do. And the theory was that if you're a good answerer, you're probably answering most of those questions well, and if you're not doing a great job, you're probably consistently not doing a great job. And it turned out to be true, and so it allowed us to use that information to both send more threads to the people who do a great job, and then provide feedback to our suppliers and coaching to our volunteers and other folks around, hey, here's some folks who are not doing a good job, and here's why. So it was the second leg of why we really improved our success. The first was gig and getting the time to response, but the second one was really around looking at quality. And so it was very rewarding because we had struggled with that for so long. So
excellent. So community has really come a long way, and to continue to grow it, I'd like to ask each of you to touch on a few guiding principles. So briefly, Rebecca, how do you prioritize work?
Sure. So that's always hard, right? We've always got way more as community managers to do than we can actually accomplish. And again, I'm going to be talking from the sort of platform side of things, and I think it's really hard to get hung up on sort of the magical, mythical feature, but it could be a program too. Like, this is the one thing that's going to solve all the problems in my community and make it that much more successful. But in doing that, we learned the hard way, and we've actually had to relearn more than once. You tend to miss all of the smaller incremental changes you could be making that would probably have an even bigger impact than that unicorn feature or program that's out there somewhere. And so I have to give credit to Fever-Bee and Rich Millington on this as well. We commissioned Fever-Bee to do some research for us earlier this year, just like benchmarking, like how do we stack up against industry best practices. And the results were pretty sobering for us and helped us get over ourselves a little bit. Yeah, I mean, and I'll give you an example. Like, we were spending or planning to spend a lot of time and energy on a big gamification feature because, every community has gamification, and we're Microsoft, and we should have an amazing gamification system. And when we got the results back from Fever-Bee, we realized that actually that wasn't the priority for us right now. There are a lot of smaller things that are actually much higher priority than building that big gamification system. That gamification system is currently on hold, and instead we are doing a bunch of sort of smaller iterative experiments around helping customers more easily figure out how to ask a question, helping customers ask better questions. Again, sort of refocusing on that customer success element. So that was something that we really sort of struggled more than once to figure out. Platform as a scapegoat, it's really easy sometimes to think the platform is the problem. I would just really encourage folks to think about, are there sort of no-code or low-code ways to do what you want to do? Because often there are, and it's much easier than, again, looking for that big, magical, mythical feature.
Nice.
Thanks, Rebecca. Dennis.
What is the problem? This is kind
You got to say it. What is the problem you're trying to solve?
Yes, thanks. This is our kind of our team mantra.
It's our mantra.
We
Dennis
joke
says
about
it all the time.
'cause I used to beat this into them. But it actually, I put this down because I thought it was helpful because it really helped us when we get stuck. Sometimes gamification is a perfect example. We're going to do it because every community needs gamification, right? And it's like, but what's the problem we're trying to solve? And we really couldn't answer that other than the fact that we needed to do it. And so when we focus on the problem and really peel that onion back and get down to what the real problem is, the solutions tend to fall out. They become much simpler, much more obvious. So that's our mantra. It really helped us. Hopefully it maybe can help you.
And Doug, I'm going to put you on the spot. You are new to the team, but you are not new to Microsoft. So how does Microsoft support community focus on innovation?
Yeah, so...
Last topic, don't blow it.
Great, pressure. Continuous innovation is such an important part of what it is that our team does. We really look at a few areas. I think the first point is very obvious, but just to underscore that we've built a culture around always thinking that we can improve our user experience through innovation. So the way that we innovate primarily is through experimentation, and we have all sorts of different types of experimentation. A lot of the experimenting that we do is quite small, and innovation in general is very iterative. So to this third point, it's really important for us to take a step back and look at our overall growth over time and how much impact we've had through all of these iterations. And I remember I was telling the team just the other night when I first joined Microsoft, an exec had mentioned to me, he used the analogy that I was on a high dive about to jump into my career at Microsoft and my role. And he made the point that it's extremely important to get out of the pool, go back up on the high dive so that you can reflect on what you've accomplished, not just personally, but how you've impacted your team and your company. And for me right now, I've been away from the community for 10 years. And so looking out at from the high dive right now, where when I started, we were supporting 1 language. Now we're supporting 24. When I started, we were supporting 1 technology. Now we're supporting 16. In our first year, we had a few 100,000 page views. Now we have over 1 billion page views per year. And so where I sit, looking at the landscape from this point, there's nothing that excites me more about my role in thinking about the way that innovation is going to impact the community experience for our team and for our industry.
Perfect. That sums it up beautifully, Doug. Thank you so much. Thank you, team. It was so good to spend time with you.
You too, Suzy.
Thank you, CMX, and thank you, community builders.